John 3, verse 31 through 35. He who comes from above is above all. He who is on earth is earthly and speaks of the earth. He who comes from heaven is above all. And what he has seen and heard, that he testifies, and no one receives his testimony. He who has received his testimony has certified that God is true. For he whom God has sent speaks to the word of God. For God does not give the Spirit by measure.
Thank you. We'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance, led by County of Fish, City of Morel, number 0263, Michael King.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we will have the national anthem performed by the Boys State Band, and we have several citizens to sing along in the mic. Go ahead. Yep.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner wave o'er the land of the free and the hope of the brave.
Good. Now, we have some special guests who we're going to welcome with the Boys State alma mater. I don't know. Are you ready? Yes, sir. Are you really ready? Yes, sir. Maestro, if you please. Come on. Really? Maestro, one more time. Now we'll sit. All right. For the purposes of introduction, I give you Mr. David Carrito, Executive Director of Boys State.
Good morning, Boys State. Good morning, sir. Thank you for waking me up. Okay, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our special guest this morning. First, I'd like to introduce the 2022 Boys State Governor, Michael Teplansky. Next, I'd like to introduce the Sons of the American Legion Department Detachment Commander, David Lee. Next, our Department of New York American Legion Department Commander and President of Boys State, Frank LaMarche.
All right, quick announcements. The people who are riding a bus home tonight, the chow hall will open at 5 to feed you dinner shortly before you board your buses. Good to go? Yes, sir. All right. Troopers and sheriffs, please meet with your supervisor in the back of the hall after this program. And now we're going to introduce our first speaker, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Flynn, United States Air Force. He's a former Boy Stater. He's a graduate of the Air Force Academy class of 2002, currently stationed in Boston area, but is about to be deployed as a liaison officer to Special Operations Task Force. Let's give him a warm Boy State welcome.
All right. Well, I'm glad to be here. It's an honor to be here. I'm a 1997 alum, and I actually still have two T-shirts. One slightly worn, a little bit of wood stain on that, and then the other nicely preserved in my trunk that I carry around with things that my wife wonders why I still keep them. So, if I could have the tech guy throw up a few of the slides. Perfect. All right, next slide. So in the next 20 minutes, what I don't expect is for you 20 years from now to remember the exact words that I say, because for me, Boys State was an excellent experience, but certainly a little bit of a blur at this point in my life. But I think as you leave here, some of the most important things to think about today and moving forward is who you are and what you do, because what you do becomes, in a sense, who you are. Next slide. So a little bit about me. I was born in Long Island College Hospital in Brooklyn, and at that time, I don't know what it looks like now, but the maternity ward looked out on the Statue of Liberty, which is something my mom constantly talks about, you know, because people get old and they talk about things. Next. All right, I lived for 3 years in Elmhurst, right across from the Queens Center Mall, if you guys know where that is. I asked my mom, where did we live in Queens specifically, and she said Elmhurst, and I zoomed in on Google Earth to the exact location because I remember looking out the window from our apartment, and I remember the exact layout of the parks and the track nearby. Next slide. And then I grew up from age 3 until 18 in Rockland County. I lived in Bardonia, and there you go. Yeah, Rocklanders. That's right. Next. Okay, so from a very young age, I knew that I wanted to fly. We flew down to Florida to see my grandparents, and I really thought that the Delta pilots were the coolest thing in the world. I will tell you today, there's nothing that I would want to do less than be a commercial airline pilot, but I digress. I also wanted to serve, and you know, I considered being a cop, I considered being a firefighter, those types of things. And I had a good support structure around me. My next door neighbor Nunzio Piampiano was in the Merchant Marine in World War II. My other next-door neighbor, Joe Cabot, lied about his age at 17 so he could enlist in the Marines, and he fought at Guadalcanal. So I had some good role models around me in a good neighborhood that helped me understand things about the world and myself. And I knew I wanted to serve. So when I found out that you could serve in the military and fly airplanes if you went to the Air Force Academy, that's what I wanted to do. And I recall Margot Asher, a friend of mine in school, in middle school, asking me, what if I didn't get into the Air Force Academy? And I kind of looked back at her and incredulously as if that was an impossibility, you know, and certainly it was. It's certainly competitive, and I was lucky to attend. Next. So in high school, I was the layout editor of the South Sports Update. I ran track. This is a more recent picture of the track uniform. I think when I was going there, it was a little bit more of a loincloth. Civil Air Patrol, there was a Rockland County Civil Air Patrol squadron I was part of, and I was fortunate to be the cadet commander of that for 2 years. And I had some great mentors there as well. One, Captain Tom DeJohnson, who is a former Army Ranger, and also Detective Neek from the Orangetown Police Department, who is also an Army Reservist. I played the trumpet and the violin, and interestingly, Joe Cabot, who lived next door to me, used to play trumpet in the Rainbow Room at Rockefeller Center, so there's a little bit more influence. I like to cook. One Easter morning, I decided it would be a great idea to cook my family a meal, and after the fire alarm went off and the volunteer fire department showed up, you know, we figured out that I probably should wait a few years. But one of our family friends responded, and one of his life goals was to be a New York City fireman, which he eventually did. I was, you know, beaten down the doors of the Air Force Academy. I was beaten down the doors of Congressman Gilman, who was my representative at the time. And I was beaten down the doors of Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who was the senator from New York at the time. Getting all the information I could and figuring out what I needed to do. And a friend of mine, Laura Triola, who was in band with me at Clarkstown South, her dad was was in the local American Legion, and he, you know, met with him, went to a dinner at the local Legion, and figured out I needed to come to Boise State so that I could be looked at seriously by Congressman Gilman. So I was very fortunate to come here. And this experience was really good. It was a little bit of a whirlwind, as I mentioned. One of the most important things I learned was don't talk back to a Marine. Somewhat self-critiquing. Next slide. And all of that got me to the point where I could then also learn not to talk back to an upper-class cadet, also self-critiquing. But I attended the Air Force Academy in the summer of 1998 and graduated in 2002. Next slide. Yeah, while I was there during basic cadet training, I, you know, went with a buddy of mine. There was this day called Field Day. You know, it's kind of a break between first basic and second basic. We saw two young ladies sitting on the hill there, and we figured, let's go talk with them. Well, it turns out, yeah, they were upper-class cadets, and their boyfriends were on the football team. So when you show up to the obstacle course, which is run by the football team, and the first things you hear is, "Where's Flynn?" That also becomes self-critiquing. So a little bit of a trend here, right? Habitual line stepper. So I've only seen one obstacle on the obstacle course at the Air Force Academy, and I don't think that's going to change. Next slide. So while I was there, 9/11 happened. And interestingly, when I was in middle school, the first attack on the World Trade Center happened. And my dad worked at 20 Vesey Street, which was right across the street from the World Trade Center. And when I went in to work, we took the PATH train from Hoboken across, and it terminated in the World Trade Center. So on this particular day, because my dad has a habit of waking up at 4, being out the door at 5, and being downtown by 6, on 9/11, he actually randomly decided that that was a day he was going to sleep in. But one of my Air Force Academy classmates, one of my classmates from Clarkstown South High School, was also at the Air Force Academy with me, and his dad was a New York City firefighter. He was lucky that day, but the young man who responded to my house on Easter morning was not lucky. As a result of that, next slide, you have, when you graduate, 60 days of leave. It's the only time you ever get it. It's use or lose. I decided that it was important to go to war, and so I gave up my 60 days to go to pilot training 7 days after graduation. I flew the mighty T-37 Tweet, which was much better at turning jet fuel into noise than it was thrust, but it produced enough thrust, obviously, to get off the ground. I then tracked into heavy aircraft and flew the T-1, and that was fun. We could kind of choose whether or not that day we were going to do a low level and end up eating barbecue in Abilene, or flying long range and getting some crawfish etouffee in Chenault, Louisiana. Next. Out of pilot training, I tracked into KC-135s, which is a big air refueling tanker. Basically, we pass gas to other airplanes. I went to Altus Air Force Base, Oklahoma, and learned to fly the KC-135 for 6 months. During this time, I also went to resistance top-off, which is where basically people are allowed to beat you and read you the riot act and all sorts of other things to train you what to do if you're ever captured and become a prisoner of war. I also got to do ocean water survival, which was slightly more entertaining because they basically drag you behind a parachute and let you drop into the ocean. Pretty nice. Next. After that, I went to McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas. What you see here is called an elephant walk. At the end of a nuclear force generation, all of the aircraft that are generated to nuclear alert are then taxied to the end of the runway. We used to launch from alert, but that has changed and we don't launch anymore. But there's some cool videos on YouTube of what that looks like. So we would basically line up like this and then have a photo taken, and during one nuclear operational readiness exercise, I was actually the lead tanker, which was pretty cool. I've also flown special operations air refueling missions in Afghanistan and Iraq, where basically, normally when you fly, you're flying way above the mountains. These are the types of missions where you're flying through the valley with your night vision goggles, looking up at the mountains with flaps extended about 10 knots above where the boom will fall out of the sky because of the receiver you're refueling. Can't fly that fast. So tankers are pretty cool. Next. But I got tired of turning left. So these are all the places I've been. Actually, the one other cool mission that we did was an aeromedical evacuation mission. And one of the ones that I went on was out to Okinawa in Japan. There was actually a baby who was born without an opening where your anus is supposed to be. And so we were able to transport that baby back to Honolulu for emergency surgery, which was pretty awesome. Next slide. So at the end of flying tankers, I was kind of tired of turning left, because if you know tanker orbits, you turn left. So my commander offered me the opportunity to fly tankers in England, or fly RC-135s at Offutt, or go fly what you probably refer to as drones, and in the Air Force we call remotely piloted aircraft. And so I chose drones because both the tanker and the RJ turned left. And I really didn't know what drones did, but I knew it was the future, and I figured it would be really cool. Well, it turns out drones also turn left, but it's a better left because you have a weapon. So, next slide. Shortly after I got there, if you'll recall, Iran likes to be also a little bit of a habitual line stepper, but maybe like at a different level than me personally. And they were threatening at this point in time to close the Strait of Hormuz and to sink any aircraft carrier that we sent through. So General Mattis, who was the CENTCOM commander at the time, ordered that we establish drone operations in the Arabian Gulf. And I built that plan in less than a week for us to go fly there and to fly in support of the carrier strike groups as they transited the Strait of Hormuz to provide them indications of and warnings of any Iranian activity that might be hostile. Next slide. After I planned it, I went out to the headquarters of all air operations in the Central Command area of responsibility, and I sat in the back right corner there, and my wing was responsible for all drone operations in the entire theater, and I was the liaison between our wing and the three-star to make sure that all the missions that needed to fly flew, and all sorts of other planning and stuff that we can't talk about. Next slide. That's my wife. We were deployed at the same time. General order number 1, hey, you can't be in the same room as your wife because no one can be in the same room as someone of the opposite sex. So that was interesting. They changed that about halfway through while we were there, which was nice, and we actually got to live together. But for the first 90 days, we could see each other in a public place, but literally we could not be in the same room or we'd both get Article 15s and go home. Next slide. When I got back, that's Joe Halpern over there on the left. The other two guys, I have no idea who they are, but it's one of those random Tough Mudder photos, right? But over on the left there, that's Joe. He and I both flew drones together. We were in the same squadron. We were deployed to the command and control center at the same time, and we ran a Tough Mudder together, and that was pretty cool. Next slide. All right, so then I went down to New Mexico, and I took people who had never flown a drone before, and I instructed them on how to fly a drone, how to employ the Hellfire weapon, how to conduct intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and how to work with all the different people that you'd end up working with. Next slide. And so when they got all nervous, you just got to remember to keep calm and laser on. All right, next slide. All right, that's me. I was really honored. I won the Wing Field Grade Officer of the Year award, which is pretty crazy. But after that, I was put in a leadership position where I was the ops officer, or I guess the Marines would think of it as an XO, of a unit that was responsible for the base's intelligence, weapons and tactics, aircrew flight equipment, and then the entire airfield, the entire radar approach control, air traffic control services, and then airspace above us that's about the size of Tennessee. Next slide. After that leadership job, I went out to Europe, to the headquarters at Ramstein, and I did a lot of planning in rooms without windows, a lot of in-depth, classified planning, and because we had to keep it light, because it was not a light topic when you deal with a peer adversary, we had some calendars with my friend and yours, Vlad, up on the wall, and some unique poses, thanks to his public affairs team. One of the key challenges we had was a Russian surface-to-air missile system, which I pulled some unclassified data from Wikipedia for. And to give you context for how challenging an environment that might be, imagine having to go attack this target right here, that this was a target, right? And there was a Russian surface-to-air missile system right outside the door, and it was on. That surface-to-air missile system would be able to shoot down an airplane in Baltimore. It's a pretty amazing capability. In red, what you see right next to that black line there is the longest range American air defense system at the unclassified level, known as the THAAD. So imagine getting in an airplane and thinking to yourself how long it actually takes to fly from point A to point B, and during that entire time you have to fly in and then someone's trying to shoot you down the entire way. That's the type of problem set one might experience and one might have to plan against if Russia were to become aggressive, which then over on the right you see the indication of what that overlay looks like for Poland, and up on the kind of top there you see what's known as the Kaliningrad Oblast, which is an exclave of Russia, and basically it's 400-kilometer range that surface-to-air missile system would range the entirety of Poland. So when the Poles say, hey, we're really worried about Russia, there's probably a pretty good reason why they are, especially given current events. One of the other cool things I was able to do is, and it was classified, and some of the details are still classified at the time, but Poland came to the United States and said, hey, we'd love to have American forces in Poland because wouldn't that be a great deterrent so that Putin doesn't invade us? And I was able to put together with a buddy of mine the plan for what the response for the United States would be to Poland that was approved by then Secretary of Defense Mattis and the President at the time. And then, since you don't actually fly airplanes while you're on staff, the joke is you fly a desk. We hand out what's known as PowerPoint badges, which is kind of joking, but you spend so much time in front of your computer that instead of logging flight hours, you say log PowerPoint hours. Next slide. And from there, I went to the Life Cycle Management Center, LCMC, in Boston, Hanscom Air Force Base being on the left there, and at this unit called Kessel Run. And Kessel Run built software for the air operations centers that I previously showed you a picture of to help them plan thousands of sorties a day in a wartime setting. And so that's where I am right now. And I will retire later this year and move to Pittsburgh because that's where my wife is from, and happy wife. Yeah, there you go. Next. So this is kind of a chart of from New York to Colorado to Texas to Oklahoma to Kansas to Las Vegas to New Mexico to Germany to Boston to Pittsburgh. And that's where I've been stationed. Next slide. And those are all the countries that I've either been to on a mission or on travel because I lived close enough to travel there. By the way, if you go to Europe, use Ryanair. It's like 50 euros. It's like the best. It's the best. Okay? That's not an advertisement. I'm in an official capacity. All the standard things. So that's my story. Next slide. So I leave you with that, right? None of you will do exactly what I did. None of you will have the exact opportunities because, you know, the space-time continuum tells us that all the challenges that you face will be different from the ones that I did. But think about what it is that you want to do with your life. Think about the opportunities that you want to have, and you got to go do it, you know. Get up every day and go do that thing so that you too can be somewhere where you want to be. And that does not have to be in the military. We need engineers. We need everybody. We just need Americans. So crush it.
In appreciation, presenting the Colonel with a certificate from the American Legion Boys State of New York for his generous contribution of his time. And we have here what we call the swag. You want to answer some questions? We have time for a few questions for the Colonel. Sit. We have some questions? There we go.
There you go. Hi, sir. My name is Derek Mazzone. I'm from Fish County. My number is 0265. How many hours do you have in the KC-135? And I forget what drone you said.
Yep, so I have right about 3,000 hours total. I've got just under 2,500 in the tanker and just over 500 and just over 300 in the drone and then 200 in pilot training. Yep.
Which one do you like better?
Man, I think you like all of them, right? There's something to be said about knowing the weather's crappy and taking off and flying up through it and being in command of United States property, state property, just like a ship, all across the world. And then there's something to be said for doing the job that we did in remotely piloted aircraft and drones I mean, I've worked with everyone in the government, probably except the CIA, right? Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Hello, sir. My name is Evan Hockwell. I'm from Stemmer County. My number is 0299. My question is, as a pilot and a drone pilot, what do you see the future in flying is, sir? Do you think we'll shift to a more fully drone fleet or stay as we are? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. The future is, in my mind, and there's been a lot of discussion on this, but I think that what we'll find in the future is that there will be an aircraft that has a person in it, and then that aircraft will have a swarm or team of aircraft that do not have people in it, and that the aircraft without the people in it will do the majority of the work, and the aircraft with the person in it will likely be where the C2 and decisions are made.
Thank you.
Yep. And then, sorry, that doesn't preclude the possibility of the person who's making that decision also flying a remotely piloted aircraft. They don't, yeah, make sense? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Michael Coombs. My number is 0024. I'm from Roosevelt County. I was just wondering what happens if you get arrested in another country?
Oh, that's a good question. The answer is it depends. As if you ever talk to the Air Force, you'll find that most answers from Air Force people are it depends. But in this case, it truly does. The first question is, do we have a status of forces agreement with them? Sometimes not. If not, then that country gets to do whatever they want with you. If there's a status of forces agreement, then that will be followed. But probably in all cases, especially if you're active duty and you're overseas and you get arrested, whatever happens there is not consequential compared to what happens when you return.
Good morning, sir. My name is Anthony Kaminsky, number 0278 from Fish County. And you just touched on Russia earlier. I was just wondering, in your opinion, do you think they would ever get into a conflict with the U.S. in the upcoming years?
I think that it depends on who's in charge. I mean, let's broaden that out to, do I think that any country at any point in time will get into conflict with the U.S., right? And I think you run into a number of factors, right? Who's in charge? Are they despotic? Are they democratic? What's our relationship been like with them over the past 50, 100 years type thing? What's the likelihood of it changing? I think there's a lot that goes into that calculus. I would say that certainly my hope is that we would avoid all conflict moving forward. The likelihood of that is, we're human, right? So it's low. Our job is to provide options so that if someone makes a poor decision, that America wins and that we bring it. Is that fair?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, Neil Stringer, 0116 McNeely County. I was wondering, you talked about drones taking better lefts. Would you say it's easier to pilot planes, being in them, immersed in the experience, or to pilot drones from afar?
I don't know that it's easier. It's different. So the experience when you take off and land an airplane, especially the seat of the pants feel, the vestibular aspects of that are exceptionally important to make sure that you don't crash the airplane. We found very quickly that not only could you not land a drone with a 1.25 second delay because we crashed one, but that you needed to be closer. But even the guys who are doing it closer don't have that seat of the pants feel. So for the takeoff and landing phase, it becomes slightly more challenging. In the target area phase or in the en route phase, I think it doesn't matter as much because you're looking at the target. An F-16 guy is looking at the target through his or her pod. and just like we're looking through it at ours. They just have the challenge of having to deal with the physical aspects, whereas I have fewer physical aspects to deal with because I'm sitting at ground speed 0.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Dario Reyes, number 0348. My question is, what was the hardest part in the military for your experience?
That's a good question. I think you always feel like today is the hardest day, and the reality is tomorrow is the hardest day. And getting up tomorrow and knowing that you're going to get up tomorrow and do the things that you need to do, and that those are only going to get more challenging, maybe that's the hardest day. Tomorrow is the hardest day.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm Aiden McLojack, number 0393 from Traverling County. I asked this question a lot to a lot of the men that I met here and a couple of the speakers. But in your opinion, who is the greatest man that you have ever met, and what was he like?
I mean, the greatest man I ever met was my dad, man. And he is, he's a hard ass, and, but he's tough and he's objective. You know, he wants to hit the target, whatever he views the target to be, and he's dedicated, and he lives up to his commitments. And so, yeah, it's my dad. Yep.
Good morning, sir. My name is Sam 0674 from Oxford County. I'm representing another citizen from Nestler. He asked, what was your call sign and how did you get it?
Oh. My call sign is Neptune. And so normally the rule for having a call sign story is, you know, there's like a heritage to this, right? So I'll break heritage for you guys today, okay? So when I was planning this mission in the Arabian Gulf, I was immersed in it personally, right, for a long period of time while my friends were off, like, you know, flying in support of, like, you know, Raiders and SEALs and Green Berets and stuff, right? And so they were super focused on that, and I was super focused on this. So I was a senior captain, right? But there became a delta between my expectations for what people should know relative to this new mission set and their actual ability. So I became slightly directive, right? So they tried to name me after some, you know, call signs of different higher-ranking individuals, and so they settled on Neptune, you know, because it was related to that Arabian Gulf mission, and it was related to, you know, a call sign for a senior naval officer. So.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
My name is Curtis Hanna from Roosevelt County, and my question was, I was wondering, what's the highest elevation you've flown at?
43,000 feet.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Marco Martini, 0191 from Cocatec County. My question was, of all the challenges and problems you've been through, what motivated you to keep on pushing forward?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, of all the problems and challenges that you've been through, what motivated you to keep on pushing forward?
Because I don't want to tell someone that I quit. I don't want to tell someone that I failed, and I don't want to admit to myself that I quit or that I failed, even though every time we go fly, you fly an imperfect sortie, and we come back and we talk honestly about that sortie and what things you did wrong, because you have to take criticism and you have to get better every time. Even though you may make that same mistake again, you have to work every time to be as perfect as you can. And so I think part of it is who I am, part of it is the people around me and who I became as a person, and then the other part is the team you're a part of. I mean, I'm talking to you as an individual today, but like the Air Force is my team, right? Like the DoD is my team, like America's my team. So I'm in a position of trust with the United States, with you, that I don't give up, right? And that I keep pushing, and that everyone does, even if it sucks, right?
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you, Colonel. We have one more. We have a brief speaker. Michael Casey, who is Boys State class of 2017 and is currently the Vice President of the Student Assembly State University of New York, is here to talk about an interesting topic. As I understand, it'll be a brief presentation, and there will not be questions after this. Mr. Casey.
Hello, New 2022 New York American Legion Boys State. How y'all doing? Thank you, thank you. So I have one thing I want to do in order to fully prepare myself to speak before you all here. Let me tell you something. This is the same shirt that I wore when I was at Boys State, like you all, in 2017. So, Governor Teplansky, citizens of Boys State, it is a tremendous honor to be standing here at SUNY Morrisville addressing you all this morning. Thank you. Quick thing, I gotta get a quick selfie here in front of everybody here, so. So I know y'all are gonna get your phones back. in a few hours. So this is gonna be going on my vice presidential Instagram page at SUNY SA VP Casey. At SUNY SA VP is my official page. So first off, I want to assure you, we together can work for a more just and equal world. I want to thank Dr. Gary Robbins, Program Director, for inviting me to speak before you. Let's give him a hand. So now, my name is Michael Casey, and I am a proud 2017 alumni of the Department of New York of the American Legion Boys State Program. A proud 2018 alumni of the Greenwich Junior Senior High School. A proud 2021 alumni of SUNY Adirondack. A proud student of SUNY Plattsburgh, and I am tremendously honored to be addressing you all here as an alumni of the Boys State Program and as the Vice President of the Student Assembly of the State University of New York. We are the student government that represents the more than 800,000 plus SUNY students on all 64 SUNY campuses. The SUNY system is the largest state university system, both in number of campuses and in student population in the entire United States of America. Before I continue, I want to recognize that we are gathered here in Morrisville on the traditional lands of the Oneida Nation of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and may we honor their elders past, present, and future. So I bring you greetings. Thank you. I bring you greetings on behalf of my fellow officers of the Student Assembly of the State University of New York, a new group of friends and partners in student activism. Our President, Alexandria Chun, our Treasurer, Jacob Longuile, our Secretary, Tasnia Zoha, and our Chief of Staff, Jack Kralik. Unfortunately, my friend Tendahi Yauku, who is the former president of the student government organization here at SUNY Morrisville, could not make it here this morning, but I was going to give him a shout out. He's our new director of communications with the Student Assembly. So Tendahi is a great friend and partner in student government. I will be, and if you see him around, feel free to ask him questions about SUNY Morrisville. So thank you very much. So when I attended this program in 2017, I was a member of the Federalist Party, serving as the state party secretary. Where are my Federalists at? Thank you. I was Citizen 116 from McNeely County with Larry Montello as my county advisor. Where are my McNeely County peeps at? Woo! Oh yeah. So I know this week has not been easy, but that is what you are here for, to challenge your endurance so that you can become stronger leaders in our generation. Now, I want to get to the meat of what I want to discuss with you all today. We are in a time of great trial in our nation and world. Democracy for the last few years has been under attack, both procedurally and militarily. We have seen it in the aftermath of the 2020 presidential election, where conspiracy theories led to an insurrection attempt at the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021, the citadel of our nation's democracy. We have seen it in our very own state, where a white man filled with hateful and racist conspiracy theories went and shot up a Tops supermarket where the vast majority of people that were shopping there that Saturday, May 14th, 2022, had the skin color of black or brown. We saw it in Uvalde, Texas, where a gunman filled with hateful ideas brazenly killed innocent children, learning how to read, write, work together, and learn about the history of this nation and world. We see it going on in Ukraine, where Vladimir Putin has filled the Russian people with hateful ideas about their neighbors. Mr. Putin says them as a brave Russian babushka or grandmother stated to one of Putin's state governors, quote, as cannon fodder. Putin has sent young people around our age literally to be slaughtered in Ukraine over a false lie. We are young leaders in an age where truth is being distorted as a lie, where people are being pitted together against each other because of their skin color, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion or no religion at all, or for their culture. It may seem like there is no hope at all, but there is hope that should drive us to work to rebuild and reform our world and how we work together. It is not going to be easy, and it will take endurance. You should remind yourself that even though it may have been tough to get through your PT with your Marines this week, you got through it. In that same spirit, you will be tested both physically and mentally while we work together to heal this world. We all need to build up endurance and keep working through the barriers that will inevitably be thrown up in our way. I want to get ordained as a minister of Word and Sacrament in the Presbyterian Church USA and serve in the Army Reserves as a chaplain. And one of my favorite old Christian gospel spirituals talks about a healing balm that heals a turbulent, violent world. You may ask, what is that healing balm in this time and place that we find ourselves in? Well, I can propose only one solution. And that balm is reading about, listening to, and exposing yourself to those who do not love like you, talk like you do, walk like you do, worship or not worship like you do, and identify in the same gender as you. We are, as you all know, gathered here on one of the 64 SUNY campuses, and I can tell you that I have done exactly that in my time as a SUNY student. I have let that healing balm of affirmation and understanding heal my hardened soul. I have learned to affirm people for who they are and what they do. You learn to search and to serve in a diverse learning community with those different from you, as the SUNY University System motto reminds us. I can tell you that I am proud that the SUNY system tries to open the eyes of those who have left our institutions of higher learning as they enter into the line of distinguished alumni of our great university system. If you choose to attend SUNY, which I would strongly advise you for your financial sake as well, you will have your eyes open to lots of people who are different from you. You will learn that we are all just unique creatures working to make this world a better place. Lastly, I want to dispel the myth that we are the quote-unquote future leaders. That, my friends, is a bunch of nonsense. I want to unequivocally state that we are the leaders of our generation, and we will be leaders in whatever field we choose. We will be servants of the people in our respective fields, and we will learn to respect each other, to understand each other's differences. We must work to heal this divide in our world, bridging the gap at home and abroad. I know that we will be stronger and more resilient if we choose to listen to each other. We will truly make our nation and a world a better place. I urge you to attend diverse places of higher learning that challenge your views, like coming to any one of our SUNY campuses. Taking that step to come to a diverse place of learning, like a SUNY campus, will make you a better person. With each person who becomes more understanding and affirming of our differences, our world will become a better place. There are people who have died in service to our nation at home and abroad in the military to protect our freedom, to make an impact on our world, and to protect our nation's ability to make a society that is affirming of our differences. There are people who have died in protests at home to hold our nation's government to account for not living up to that call, to make a society that is affirming of our differences in the United States. That, my friends, is why we need to work to improve our world and make it more affirming of all people. People have put their lives on the line for us to be able to work to protect our nation's ability to change. That sacrifice, my friends, is why it is incredibly important to work for a more affirming society. We must honor their sacrifice to make our world a more affirming of our differences. Society, through the stability of our elected government, as President Lincoln reminded us in his Gettysburg Address, quote, shall not perish from this earth, only if we choose to listen to each other and affirm each other for our differences. That, my friends, is how we learn to search and serve in our world. That, my friends, is why we are here at Boys State. May the great program of the Boys State, the American Legion, the 64 campuses of the State University of New York, the State University of New York system, the great state of New York, and these United States of America never perish from the face of this earth. Thank you.
You gotta get your swag. Okay. We're going to present Michael with a certificate of appreciation for the American Legion of Boys State, and we're going to give Michael standard swag. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay. Oop. All right. We're going to do a short musical break. No, we did that, sorry. We're going to do a brief sports report from Jonathan Becker.
Morning, gentlemen. Great job finishing up all the sports programs and championships yesterday. I got to say, that was the closest game I have ever seen between a city and a team comprised entirely Marines, so great job. As a reminder, we're going to have the cross-country run at 10:30 or 15 minutes following this assembly. That'll start up in the parking lot outside of the football stadium. So if you're not running, come support and cheer on your fellow Boy Staters. Thank you.
All right. A short musical video by Alan Jackson.